All right, welcome everybody to another weekly edition of Stock Market Mutterings. This is for the week ending on March 18th. Hope you had a good week trading. And every week, what we'll do here is just try to find you. I'm going to do my best to try to find you some really good setups to help you make a little bit of money. Now, you normally see my grizzled curmudgeon mug down there in the lower left-hand corner. I got to take off early today, so I'm not going to get a chance to edit the video, but still, this thing is going to be packed with detailed ideas to help make you money. And as you can see, the market is still open here on a Friday. We got about another hour left, so my apologies for that. Now, if we kind of pick up where we left off here going last week, we talked about we were at a pivotal moment. So if you go back and you look at last week's mutterings, it was a pivotal moment where we were at this double top. And I felt that if we got any kind of momentum towards the upside, the natural reaction would be for people to start talking about sniffing out these all-time highs, or at least making an attempt to run to these all-time highs of 285, 286 is somewhere in that area. Well, that didn't happen. We had a completely different week. So right now we're in this cycle of 1 week on, 1 week off. So you had this really strong week of breakouts, a week of selling, a week of breakouts, a week of selling. So we're kind of back in this seriously choppy market with some pretty wide ranges. It's been a little low on the volume here, but we've also had some political and some other kind of things overhanging this week that may have contributed for some of this. The real important thing here is when we look at it technically, where we left off last week was, would we break out? Or would we come back to this 50 moving average? If you guys can see this red line here on my daily charts down below, this 50 moving average been somewhat of the basket weave. You know, it's broke through that, broke out above that. Now it's nestled here as I'm doing this right now. Anything can happen in the last hour of trading. But here you are again, and this is ultimately what happened. So when we left off last week, it's like, are we going to try to ramp to all-time highs, or are we going to back test back into this 50 moving average? And that's where we are right now. So there's the answer. So as we move forward, if you're looking at the overall markets to get a hint of your portfolios or however your trading goes, you got to hold up in this area. I think if you start getting pressure underneath of that, you don't have any support, legitimate support, till about 271, and then possibly even these lows of 265. Now 265 is obviously deep, but if you get any early selling, I would look for your first initial support to be somewhere between 270 and a half to 271, and that would be the lows here from March 7th. So kind of use that right now as the short-term gauge for line in the sand support. Underneath of that, you've got to start looking at March 2nd lows, but who knows what will happen. Now, of course, to the upside, it's a little bit easier. You know, are we going to next week just ramp up and continue this type of pattern and go back towards the 279s? It's really difficult to tell. I mean, this market has changed. I keep saying that in every single week in these mutterings. We went from the peaceful market, the grind up market, the melter market to some wild, wild ranges where you're getting, you know, some wacky moves, and not just the market, but in these stocks too. So right now it's kind of a short-term traders, scalpers market, especially for day traders. I don't want to use the word scalp for like seconds, but you really have to lower your time horizon, because you can have stocks that break out. I've seen so many of them this week. BA is one of them that had a really nice breakout during the week, and then it just turns around and drops $7 or $8. You know, this is something that you didn't see. You didn't have behavior like that. Let me see if I could cue it up what day it was. Let's see. Yeah, right here. So you had a really tight breakout up here, you know, building, and it was due for a bounce, and you had a nice breakout here, a couple of tall candles, and it's from that moment on, this thing has done nothing but sell. I mean, look at it. It peaked out there towards 347, and since that time, look, it's just, you've had a few bounces intraday, but since then it's traded down considerably. So my point is, you see a lot of stocks that are flagging and breaking out, but then those breakouts don't hold. So for a lot of people that were introduced to trading in 14, 15, and 16, this is something new, even 17. This is going to be something new for you. These breakouts aren't as consistent as they used to be, so just kind of keep that on tap. Now let's move along and take a look at a couple stocks. Since I just spent a few minutes insulting breakouts, let's talk about an actual breakout. Now, if we do get ramp up, or we get some consistent rampage going on during the course of the week, one of these stocks that is bucking the current trend is this Western Digital. Now, it was already a monster stock with the multi-day run for starting from 86 going to 106. This thing had, I don't know, a dozen green days in a row and some pretty tall greens. And now you're just kind of flagging here. And as I'm doing this, you're right here on a breakout. just slightly above. You can see it just kind of poked its head right above the breakout. And of course, it's going to probably pull back here a little bit because you're at major resistance. But keep an eye right here. This is the number, 106.57s to 106.83s. Keep an eye on this level. If this is able to build and push through that on Monday or something, I think this is a pretty good shot at taking long if you can get your risk low I should say, get your risk low at the right spot. The thing I wouldn't do in this market for sure is chase a first green candle. I think that's going to end up in a lot of problems. You look at stuff like Tesla today, NVDA, you had some opening greens that really looked attractive, and then they turned around. So I wouldn't do that. I'd make sure you had some sort of base, some sort of build where you could control your risk, and then see if this thing can just kind of jam out and get you maybe a nice little move like this. So watch this WDC. Now, speaking of NVIDIA, there's always a trade somewhere, someday, on NVIDIA. And again, this is only if the market shows some better characteristics than what it shows right now. And that is, you got a nice tall flag up here. So when you're kind of looking at what happened in the market versus what happened to certain stocks, some have not been hit, WDC for example, as bad as others, like BA. Some have been really punished and others have not. So usually what is a good idea in a lot of cases is when there's a bear market, you look for the ones that are the least affected. And when the market turns around or when you have a big rip, those are the ones that are going to go first. It just seems to always work that way. It doesn't always work that way. I shouldn't say that. It's always a case-by-case basis, but in most cases, that's what you'll see. Anyway, to cut through the garbage, 253.37. Keep a very close eye on that. If it starts to perk around there, you can see it's holding up really well here on Friday. If it continues to hold and perks up and runs through that, I would think this thing would, at bare minimum, would give you some cash in your pocket for at least a tall candle. It's a tendency that when it starts to rip, you do get some big, strong candles. So kind of put NVIDIA there on the watch list. Also, I spoke of BA early. Kind of watching this one here for a bounce. I tried a couple of times this week for it. One wasn't very good. One was good. It just didn't quite work out for me, to be honest with you. In the end, it wasn't horrifying, but it just didn't work. This thing just would not bounce all week. It was just a mess. So over this last 3 days, you've got some sort of support. You got some wicks here on the bottom of the daily chart around 320, high 324s, 325, and it's holding. It's not setting the world on fire. It's not solidifying massive support there. It's not really enthusiastic, but nonetheless, it's a base, and it's a little bit higher than what you had during the last market correction here of 319s. So my kind of plan with this one right here is to see if this can build early in the week. It's probably worth a trade. I'm not saying it's going to run back up or this is a great opportunity for you to get in long term on this. Just looking for a trade that maybe we can get back to the 50 moving average of 342. Now on the flip side of that, if this thing loses this after 3 days of holding, I can't see how you could make the case for this thing not immediately ending up down at 316, maybe even 300. So this is a pretty important area. As I said, you got support there. It's not been enthusiastic high volume support, but nonetheless, you have it. And if there's a good market day, which we're probably due for after about 4 or 5 days of sloppy market, you never know. You could get yourself a nice quick trade here on this one. Also, SQ here is another one that's kind of got a nice little, oh look, it's going here. I should probably turn this off and buy it. It's a joke. But it's got a nice little flag working itself here. Pay attention to 50, around the 55.5 to 56s and see if this one will go. Same thing. I think you're going to need maybe a little bit of market help, and it's something that'll be happening early in the morning. You get here in the afternoon. I mean, we're seeing candles here going back and forth, but it's also options expiration day, so you could get a lot of false signals. But this one is another one, like WDC, that's been bucking the trend. So just kind of keep an eye on that one. Also, BABA, same thing. A lot of these are kind of breakout stocks looking for some further continuation or some further upside. Only if market conditions get a little bit better. The breakout one here I'm looking at is 201, maybe later in the week. Again, another one that's holding up really well, that's building after some news on it that gapped it up. This was a good technical breakout. We even featured this one last week, the 194 breakout. So if you get above this highs from Thursday, 201s, you should make it into these 205s. If nothing else, you should at least make it up there for a trade. And last, I'm going to throw you in something a little bit different. We've seen this week, if nothing else, this has been a low float week. We saw ZSAN trying to come back. We've seen RDFS, I think it was. Yeah, it was one of the Chinese fashion company. And then we saw DXR. I mean, we've seen some, just talking about some seriously nut moves where these things have just gone. I guess it was a $5 stock going to 20. I think it was KBFS. Is that it? I don't know. Well, let me think about it. Okay, never mind. I can't think of it right now. It's been too long of a week. Anyway, this BXC is another one here, and it's actually flagging on the daily. And I think if you get a good move over 37.43, you got to consider the fact that you're going to get some sort of low float squeeze out run like we've seen. I mean, it's been a very big week for that. We've had 3 or 4 really solid stocks that have made some epic runs this week in the 100 to 400% range. So, don't take your eyes off of these things. I mean, they're a little bit different to trade. It's not something I always go to, but if I can find some decent spots where you've got some tighter consolidation like this and you can limit your risk, then, oftentimes I'll give it a try. But in most cases, I don't. It's just not one of my fortes, but these things have been running. And if you can get it, as I said, where your risk is at a good spot you're comfortable with. Some of these things have they I know they're overbought, and they reek of overbought. The RSIs are high, the percentage of gains is high, but it's stocks that you get this here at 36, 37, it may go to 50 real quick. I mean, we've seen that all, but you got to be careful. We had a lot of halts with these this week too. So anyway, I'll just throw that one out there as a little wild card play. So we look back, we've got some decent breakout setups: WDC, NVIDIA, SQ, and BABA. We got BA possibly for a bounce play, and then this BXC as a wild card. Again, a lot of these are really hinging on the market kind of making a short-term turnaround. If that doesn't happen, then a lot of these will just have to be switched to plan B, which is possibly even shorting some of these and using stops towards their high. We're just going to have to see. So anyway, guys, thanks for watching this video. Until next week, trade well. If you need help, visit thelincolnlist.com. Take care. Talk to you soon.